Okay, good evening and welcome back to the We Are Marshall podcast. My name is Stephen Marshall and this is my co-host Bill McIntyre. We're basically going to discuss some more subjects with you folks. We appreciate you coming to watch us. Hit that like, share, and subscribe. And also, we are sponsored by a large dating site out there that's new to the market. Everybody should give it a try. It's mateconnector.com. Go check it out. Very inexpensive, and it possesses all the features of the large big players on this one. Now, the first subject we're going to get into today is FBI whistleblowers testify in Congress. The FBI targeted pro-life groups, Catholics, and parents attending school board meetings with investigations in an effort to inflate the sense that there was a domestic terrorist threat, according to new whistleblower reports. House Judiciary Committee Chairman Jim Jordan, he's a Republican from Ohio, detailed the reports in a Thursday morning news conference just minutes before the three FBI whistleblowers were scheduled to testify before the committee. Jordan described allegations from the whistleblowers that the FBI's D.C. office pressured the rest of the organization towards a political agenda. If you are a parent, I quote, attending a school board meeting, if you are a pro-lifer praying at a clinic, or you are a Catholic simply going to mass, you are a target of the government, a target of the FBI, Jordan said, adding that officials attempted to inflate again. And Jordan says his committee spoke with over 24 FBI whistleblowers in compiling its report. 3 of those whistleblowers are scheduled to testify, and they have, before the committee Thursday morning. In their testimony, they were badgered at best, these FBI agents. Some on the Democrat side would state they are not whistleblowers after they testified as such. They stated unequivocally that the above statements by Jim Jordan were all true. So basically, they're validating that the FBI and law enforcement was utilized as a weapon against conservative groups, parents, and a multitude of other things, including religious groups that had in line with conservatism. Now, this is very concerning. This is, in my opinion, even worse than Watergate. Watergate was targeted at one individual, an opponent. This is targeted at us, all of us. So we should fear this, whether you agree or disagree with who they target. They could target you someday, so you should never want them to target at all. What say you, Bill?
I'm trying to find where my noise is coming from my computer over here. I got a few windows open. I'm trying to find it. So give me a second here. I don't know where it's coming from. Oh, there it is. Okay. All right. Sorry about that. Sometimes those videos stop playing. This topic is something else. I was watching a lot of the testimonies and a lot of I did a lot of the backstory on what people are being charged with and all that. And I probably focused more on the reactions of the Democrats to the way that Jim Jordan handled the whole process. Jim Jordan had basically, it's funny if you read the story from CNN, you get one spin, and you read it from not even just Fox News, any other network or outlet, you're going to see a different take. And of course, what we came up with that first caught my attention was that when the Democrats were asked if they were able to see the testimonies, and Jordan denied them to see a testimony. He said, "You'll see the testimonies, but for right now, let's talk about this." And I actually don't know entirely for sure. I don't want to see how this plays out, but of course they spun that as a tactic for the Republicans to just shut down a dialogue, and they're treating it like a trial, which it isn't. It's not. It's a Senate inquiry. It's not a trial. It's not like you have to present all your discovery to opposing counsel when you're doing it. It's not like that. But of course they're going to spin it that way. But there's some pretty serious charges here, and you get the whistleblowers who are being questioned if they're patriots or not. One guy got questioned about his book deal coming up and all these things. And a lot of different directions to go on this one. Steve.
Well, there definitely is. But I mean, let's be realistic. The way they were treated to begin with, to me, was just a travesty to the whole system. I mean, they were basically telling these whistleblowers, "You're not whistleblowers."
Right.
I mean,
They're coming down on the concept of whistleblower because it's a case where it doesn't actually work for them. When in any other situation, if they had a whistleblower that, for like example, the January 6th committee, when they had whistleblowers that were anti-Trump, they were all about that. They'll give them all the airspace and all the time they need to get in front of a microphone and speak. That's my take.
And the thing, as far as these whistleblowers, it wasn't that Jim Jordan wouldn't give them the testimony. Like Stephen Friend, who's one of the FBI agents, he has the right to withhold his testimony till he gives it. So he didn't really, they didn't want, it was them. They felt that they were putting themselves in danger or it would get leaked or something if they put it out there. So, Jim Jordan, for what he does, he is an aggressive person, but I don't think on that was his tactic at all. I think it just kind of played out that way because that's how these whistleblowers wanted it. But anyway, we'll move on to a subject.
I guess I'm sorry, they spun it to say that they didn't want Democrats included in this interview and said that they aren't entitled to all the evidence, which isn't the case at all. And he said that the law hasn't determined their whistleblowers; their attorney is just asserting that. But then when you have O'Boyle's testimony that the FBI will crush you, his exact words, when a committee member, Representative Kelly Armstrong, Republican of North Dakota, asked him what he'd advise, he said, "This government will crush you and your family if you try to expose the truth about things that they are doing wrong." And we're all examples of that. And even the FBI director, he couldn't even give a definitive answer on whether he thought that the January 6th insurrection was what they originally claimed it was. It was very, very shady, very it wasn't what I was hoping it would be. But what are your positive takeaways from it?
Well, I agree. It seems to be it's never what they say it's going to be, But the bottom line is we did know a lot of this. Unfortunately, the Democrats are using that as a talking point to get rid of it. But to hear it directly from the FBI agents is powerful. It's something that we should be heard. And they listened to that. I believe the guy's name was Vindman on the Ukrainian whistleblowing stuff that blew up in Trump's face. So the bottom line is if you're a whistleblower, it's dictated, like Jim Jordan did say, by the law, not by someone just putting a tag on someone. It's the way it is conducted lawfully.
Right.
But with that, we'll move on to the next subject you had pitched for today. This is going to be a pretty interesting one as well, and we are close to it. This is the We Are Marshall podcast. Please hit that like, share, and smash that subscribe. Go check out our sponsor at www.mateconnector.com and see what they have in store for you in the dating website and its inexpensive features for you. The next subject we're going to go to is mass student sues shop for not being able to wear two-gender shirt to school. Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, actually, he sued the school system. They're suing the school system for not being allowed to wear his shirt. 12-year-old Liam Morrison, young patriot, a lot of respect for this kid, from Middleborough, Mass., has been sent home twice from school for wearing a controversial T-shirt that school officials say broke the dress code. And the shirt simply stated that there are two genders. And he took particular issue with this. He is rejecting the pressure of the wokeness, if you will, and he is just standing up for what he feels is science and his right to have an opinion, because he sees what's happening in the schools and he sees all the proliferation of like for lack of a better word, wokeness. And the family's suing the school. Of course, he fought back a little bit. He went to school on Friday, May 5th, with the same shirt, but he put duct tape over it, and instead over the only two genders part of it, he wrote the word censored. So he's stirring the pot pretty good here. Now, As an aside, 10 years ago, this wouldn't even be a conversation. This T-shirt wouldn't even need to exist, right?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think we've touched on a few things. It just blows my mind. This is, in my opinion, a fight against taking away from females. So for decades and
Oh,
decades and decades, we fought for the rights of females. To
yep,
what end? To let the Democrats go into wokeness and then rip it from them when they ripped everybody about women for decades? It's
right.
amazing. But what I've found here is he wore a shirt, like you said, that stated there are only two genders. He was
Mhm.
removed from school for not taking it off. This is declared hate speech, which to me is unbelievable. That's hate speech.
Right.
And
That's going.
why
That's
they
going a
feel
little
he,
far.
yeah, that's why they're saying he violated the school dress code. Now, I mean, this is where the sensitivity of the world is coming in. If those words bother you, the bottom line is maybe in his opinion, in his mind, and I'm not dictating either way, but to me there are two genders. That's it. That's how I look at it. Can people fluidly be a trans one way? I mean, if they want to, go ahead. I don't care. But the
Well, there
point
are two
being is,
classifications: his actual
yeah,
gender, which is
exactly.
genetics, and then there's identification. That's what
Yep.
the matters come down
So
to.
we got
Right.
to stick with the science and the health. Because what if you go to a doctor? This is the way I look at it, okay? Let's say you were a female and you became a male. You go to the doctor. You're not going to tell the doctor I'm a female. You're not, because he's
Right.
going to have to look at your body a little differently than he would for a male. So you're going to tell him, yeah, I might have transitioned and want to be a male, and that's fine, or that's what I desire. But unfortunately, you're a female, and they got to treat you in the health system that way.
Right.
So it's just these things are just unreal. The kid should be able to express his opinion. I do want to point though: is this him expressing it, or is this his parents pushing it on him? That's
No,
one thing.
he bought into the stories. He saw what was happening in the schools, and he decided that he wanted to state his opinion. And it's no different than a redneck bumper sticker. I mean, let's just call it what it is. I mean, it's not offensive unless you're looking to be offended. And obviously he had to know he's going to push some buttons, and he was going to wrinkle some bloomers, if you will. But the fact is this is a real thing. Like I told you, my 78-year-old mother who works in the school saw this. Okay. But no, I watched an episode of Matt Walsh not that long ago, and he's still going to colleges despite the fact that they all try to shut him down. And he goes to the college, and he has a particularly adamant transgender student activist, or actually a transgender herself, I'm not sure. But she was really given the business on about the science of, whether you're a woman or not, and using the words, person capable of giving birth instead of using the word mother and all that. And he shut it down perfectly. And I'm not, if you're watching, I'm not saying I like them shutting her down, but for the sake of truth and keeping things real, he said, okay, imagine you're a paramedic. Because you go out on an emergency and you respond to a call. Inside, you find a man claiming to have a miscarriage. What are you going to do? Are you going to treat him? The entire crowd was quiet. I mean, it was you could hear a mouse running across the floor.
Healthcare. That's what I brought up. That's the only
Yeah,
like
right.
when we come
Yeah,
down to it. The bottom line: if you want to be a man and you're a girl, go for it. We don't care. But unfortunately, if you go to the doctor, you're going to have to say, I'm a man. And that
right.
is just the way it is, because they have to treat you that way. So don't take it wrong, people. We do support it. Do what you want, but do understand that that's just where we draw the line there. You got to go to the doctor. That's how it's going to fall. So anyway, good subject again, Bill. I think bringing awareness on subjects like this is good. We should talk about it more. It's okay to, disagree and agree on these subjects, and we hope that our audience feels the same way.
Well,
But
this subject can go so many different ways, and I'm trying not to, but it's about people being too easily offended. It's about people not being able to believe things. If you were, I saw a bumper sticker today that says, "I'm Christian and I vote." Okay, I know you can see yourself a Christian. I have some beliefs myself. I don't throw it out there in a bumper sticker for all the world to see. But what's more offensive? Is that any more or less offensive, if you will, than the T-shirt that this kid was wearing? He's stating his beliefs, okay? He's standing up to something he sees that he finds troubling. And the school has the right to enforce a dress code, but they don't, unless you're wearing something that's supporting the Nazi Party or, blatantly advocating for violence or something, unspeakable on your shirt. It's not a breach of the dress code. It's simply he's making waves that people don't want. So I mean, this is about being a kid today. Here you have a regular kid who has the strength. Remember, he's 12. That's pretty good for a 12-year-old, okay? And he's fighting back. And it's not about the money that they're trying to do. They're trying to make a point to the school system that this to stop this nonsense now. I mean, you and I are a few years apart, but we were in school. I mean, I know sometimes it was a little too rough, but you had to find your way and get along, and you had to handle adversity. And when things didn't go your way, you couldn't just send a kid home because he said something that someone didn't like.
But see, here's a thing you just brought up, and I appreciate it. Actually, you say when we were younger, it was too rough. I mean, it was rough, but let's be honest, it needs to be that way. That's how things sometimes are worked out. It's unfortunate. Right. Hope that there's some good people that help when people are getting bullied or put down or anything like that.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is that's the world that we live in. It's a hard world. You're going to go to a boss. I think you brought it up in one of the podcasts before. You're going to go to a job, and a boss may just not like you. And he may say and treat you a different way. You just got to suck it up and move on as long as he's not being illegally offensive. But okay, we'll move on to the next subject. And this one I found, Bill, very interesting story for me. Hit that. This is the We Are Marshall podcast. Hit that like, share, and subscribe button. Go check out our large sponsor, MateConnector.com. They are at www.mateconnector.com. They are a large dating site that is very inexpensive and has a multitude of features like the big players, but you don't have to pay that exorbitant price. So go check them out. See what happens for you on there. We hope you're the best. The next subject is something probably most people don't know and aren't aware of, which is very scary within itself. Red tape and its effect on our power grid. Now, red tape is basically a bunch of bureaucratic stuff you're going to have to go through to keep our power grid going. Imagine that.
Otherwise known as regulations.
Yeah, you got to go through red tape to keep the power on in this country. That's ludicrous. But anyway, the nation's top hydropower trade group and energy developers are raising the alarm on the burdensome regulatory process facing new and existing projects, warning a reliable source of electricity for millions is at risk. According to the Department of Energy, it takes developers of new hydro projects about 5 years on average to obtain an original license, and operators of existing facilities nearly 8 years to relicense. Think about that. So they have to plan 8 years out to keep something going that's already working for us, and they have to plan 5 years out to do something new. That slows up the whole process, okay? Further, up to 11 different federal agencies are involved in a typical hydropower licensing process. 11 agencies. That's ridiculous.
Yep.
Including the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, which isn't involved in other renewable energy projects. Meanwhile, about a third of the non-federal hydropower fleet has licenses that are set to expire by 2030. So that's 1/3 of non-federal hydropower fleets are going to expire in 5 years. And another 20% between then and 2035. Wolf said without permitting reform that streamlines hydropower relicensing and licensing facilities may be forced to shut down, and energy developers may seek to invest elsewhere, jeopardizing the power of tens of millions of Americans. Again, here we are with our government being reactive to expiring licenses rather than finding a better solution proactively. This puts the grid at risk because of the studies included for the ecosystem, which could take years in itself. These are non-polluting means of energy. Therefore, you would think our government would be all over this to make sure
there are the key words right there. You would think.
Of these grid contributors. So this is where we get, we sit here all the time, and I know most people do this. We may not, But most people sit at home and they go, these people running the country, they're smarter than everybody else. They're the smartest people in the country. Well, when you pay attention to what's going on there, that's clearly not the case. And that's why we should be concerned. Look at who are really voting. Bill stressed the point that how we focus on voting, we focus for the candidate and what they're going to offer, not the party. You've got to start focusing on that, people, because these are the people that are going to actually get things done. The people that just go with party are not going to help. And this is where we're going to end up if these things keep going. What say you to this enlightenment, Bill?
Well, you want to talk about smart? How Pete Buttigieg finding a way to become the secretary of the Department of Transportation? That's smart, okay? Because he knows about as much transportation as I do nuclear power. Okay, yeah, I found the same thing about that you did about the licensing process. It's actually staggering, and if you hit on this, forgive me for reiterating, but it's to the point where a large percentage of these projects, because let's face it, major projects are the ones that have to deal exclusively with the federal government, are actually abandoning it. They're walking away from the licensing. They're taking the loss. They simply can't afford the taxes on the real estate and the people that they're employing, waiting for this to happen. So constructing a wind energy facility, for example, takes two months. All right. But connecting a new farm to the grid can take 7 years. And then on top of that, the licensing takes another 5 or 6 after that. So you're looking for power. It's not going to happen until your newborn's out of high school. It's mind-boggling. So the power grid is something that's been in the news a lot. Okay, when we first were exposed to our first real major act of domestic terrorism, we started looking at our soft targets. We talked about subways, our water systems, and our power grid. Our power grid is notoriously hodgepodge. It's notoriously outdated. Most equipment is 40 years older or older. And they say that's essentially the shelf life. As we know, we're not using less power each day. We're using more. Okay. California has mandated that 30% of all over-the-road trucks, the 88,000 GVW vehicles, have to be electric. That's ludicrous. You can't take a truck and have it.
That's
first of all, the cost of a semi-trailer in an electric is unbelievable. So they've done that along with making, I want to say, upward of 70% of all vehicles in California with an eventual goal of 100% being electric. California has brownouts every time the temperature hits 90 degrees.
Yep.
Okay. The power structure, the power grid is overworked as it is. You add to that electric cars in every household. I mean, I don't have the numbers of how many cars there are in California, but it's the biggest state in the country. Okay. Well, at least population wise. And everybody has a car. All right. No, has anyone ever thought about what it's like if you don't have a garage and you actually might park on the street? Where are you going to find all the ability to put up all these car chargers? It's so ludicrous. But yet they're talking about doing this addition to overload an already burdened power system. So last year, West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin proposed the Energy Independence and Security Act of 2022. It was a bill seeking to reduce timelines for building critical infrastructure down to 3 years or less from the current 5 to 10 or more, as you stated. And it believe it or not, one of the reasons it got shot down was because Manchin voted for Biden's Inflation Reduction Act. So the Republicans didn't give him the support. Okay, are we in this together or not? Okay, this is Manchin, whatever his politics. Okay, he's got his issues. He's got his scandals behind him, but he's trying to do something that everyone in the country will benefit. That's not just his district. And the whole country will benefit from this. I mean, we only have 3 major power grids in this entire country, and one of them almost exclusively serves Texas. Yeah, this is unbelievable.
You got to, in defense of them not supporting Joe Manchin, I mean, that bill is ridiculous. The Inflation Reduction Act. It has nothing to do with inflation reduction. Zero. It is a
and he voted for it. Right.
Yeah, it's a straight green bill. So here, this is why I don't have any sympathy for Joe Manchin. He's in a state that is not green. It is one of the larger coal areas on the planet. Okay,
Of course.
so what you just did is looked at the people that voted you in and said, "We don't need you anymore. I'm going to go green with that bill." So he abandoned them, and he abandoned his party. So
but that's not about going green. This whole conversation is about going green. This whole conversation is about boosting an exhausted and potentially crumbling system. And with the use in particular, what brought this up was the hydropower,
right.
which with most states with hydropower, okay, have traditionally less expensive electricity.
Correct.
Okay. But I'm not being argumentative, but obviously we can disagree on things. This bill, to me at least, isn't about green energy. I think that if this was to go the right direction, yes, the idea would be to make more renewable, greener sources of industry. I mean, hydroelectric is not without its environmental impact. Okay, the Colorado River is down to almost dead pool status right now. There's water shortages. It's not going to be a guaranteed thing going forward. Wind farms and solar, if it's not sunny and you don't have wind, you don't have power. These are real issues. But I'm just looking at it from not just the green perspective. So Joe Manchin, from being from West Virginia, he should understand that anything about energy is going to be the death of him if he doesn't play it right, obviously.
Yep.
But I'm trying to look at the big picture here, and I know you are as well. But the big picture to me is that I have heard more than 100 times about how bad our energy infrastructure is, and how we continue to add new systems onto old technology. It's like propping up the broken telephone poles with another tree and leaving it there instead of actually replacing the pole. So if I'm going a different direction than you, I apologize on that.
No, the direction's fine. I was just stating that Joe Manchin, I mean, he's probably done. I mean, in my opinion, when it comes around for our next election, because he went away, and that whole Reduction Act was a green bill. It was the big AOC Green Initiative and Bernie Sanders that they all wanted. So, I mean, it's a lie what it is. I just feel also that the bill that they didn't support him on wouldn't have passed the Senate anyway. So why support it, and why help a guy that just betrayed everything to do with his constituents and his party?
Right.
So, I know that's what politics is all about, but that's the fine give and take you got to do. But he really went off the rails on that one. So,
but why don't you and I continue our crusade to try to get people to move beyond politics and look at the actual issues?
Well, we got to try to do that, but you got to also understand if they don't use some of their leverage, they're going to just get walked all over too. So that's something. This is why what's going on with the debt ceiling, which we'll get into later, and that's what we'll talk probably more on.
But we have to get politicians to stop being so dug in. And I can't believe I'm saying this, but bring back Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton was able to actually walk across the aisle and get people to join hands and make things happen.
Yeah, Joe Manchin could have done that, though. He blew that. So he could have had a Clinton-esque moment. He blew it.
Yeah, because he stood on a bully pulpit with the squad and with Joe, and they basically said, hey, we control both houses right now, so, good luck with what he did. And he overplayed his hand, no question about it.
He definitely did, and Biden pushed him to there. So that's where he is. I mean, it's unfortunate, but that's what politics can do to you. He's kind of put in a corner right now. But we'll move on to another subject you came up with. This one, we'll go. This is the We Are Marshall podcast. Once again, please hit like, share, and subscribe so we can continue to grow this podcast. This is Bill McIntyre, my co-host. My name's Stephen Marshall. We are the We Are Marshall podcast. As I stated, we are sponsored by MateConnector.com, a large dating site for an inexpensive price. Go check it out and see what it has in store for yourself. This next one has me so confused, Bill. Okay, it's the Adidas and modeling suit, the bathing suits, the male model. Please explain this to me.
Okay, I was hoping you'd open up and give me your thoughts on it. But sure, I'll do that. I lost the article. I had it. The Adidas situation was based upon an homage to a French designer. I'm gonna look it up real quick. The Adidas Pride collection.
I'll give you the opportunity to get where you're going, and I'll go with what I have to start. But utilizing male models for women's swimwear. What are we thinking? Focusing on fluid gender rather than the female of which the suit was made for is unbelievable. This stuff is getting out of control. Companies trying to push the envelope, yet getting hit in their profits. Will they never learn that this is considered unacceptable by many of the people of this country? Not that people can't be fluid, but that companies are utilizing advertising in such a woke way that it is becoming cumbersome for the business and many of the people that support said businesses. So, I mean, the bottom line is you're putting a man in a bathing suit that was predominantly made, not predominantly, it was made for a woman. Okay, a woman's supposed to wear it. It's not going to fit a male body right. You're going to have things that are popping out or whatever, however you want to talk about it. Okay, and this is going to be on billboards and all kinds of things. And who are going to see it again, people? That Bill and I will continuously protect. Kids. They're going to see these type of advertisements, and they do not need to. Again, please explain this to me, Bill. I do not understand.
All right, I wasn't unprepared. I just wanted to get the name of the name of the designer that they would. This whole Adidas collection was part of the Let Love Be Your Legacy collection made by South African designer Rich Nisi to celebrate Pride Month. Okay, so obviously we see there's a basis there in Pride Month. Okay, the issue with this is that Riley Gaines, who is the highly decorated swimmer who's, as I said, out in the lecture tour, and please, people, look her up on YouTube. This woman is out there, and she's fighting for the same things on a much larger level than Steve and I can keep talking about. We are fighting for women. This was a woman's swimsuit. I don't know, and if I'm an uneducated old buffoon, fine, okay? I don't know what putting a guy in a bathing suit and a prominent bulge is going to do for a women's swimsuit collection, except to say, hey, look, we can do this because we're Adidas. Well, if I'm not mistaken, Adidas stands for All Day I Dream About Sports, not I Dream About men in women's bathing suits, okay? Now, this is such an insult to women. And Riley Gaines, God love her, her first reaction was to tweet, let's get the exact words here. I have this. Hold on.
And if you don't know who Riley Gaines is, she's a swimmer that Leah Thompson continues to steal the thunder from. She's pretty much the greatest woman swimmer in collegiate right now in college.
Yeah. I don't understand why companies are voluntarily doing this to themselves. They could have at least said the suit is unisex, but they didn't because it's about erasing women. I'm going to say that again. I'm going to belabor and overpoint this to the point where you want me to shut the hell up. It's about erasing woman, all right? Ever wonder why we hardly see this go the other way, she said. I said this the other day. You don't see a lot of women dressing up as men, right, and demanding acceptance, okay? Women's swimsuits aren't accessorized with a bulge. There's this famous episode of In Living Color, which resurfaced when this whole Leah Thomas thing happened, with Jim Carrey with the ridiculous pigtails, and the woman's suit. And he has this deep voice, and the reporters ask him all these questions, and she says, so what's with that bulge in the suit there, Jim? Whatever, the woman's name. And he says, oh, a girl's got to have her secrets. And they use just that voice. And this, I'm sorry, it's the first thing that came to mind. So what's the point? So then you have Morgan, okay? She's a social media influencer and a champion of empowering women. She says, I'm tired of women being undermined. Adidas now has men modeling swimwear and clothing in the women's section. So they can double down on how they're honoring this South African designer and all they want. It's got nothing to do with the fact that this is just more. I don't know. What's the joke now? Oh, I guess they want to join Bud Light, Ford, and Target and losing money. I mean, what is the? what is this? People are rebelling against this. And this is where it ties in the Bud Light, the Dylan Mulvaney, to the Judy Blume movie that Dylan Mulvaney is now endorsing. Okay, this stuff is just it's poison. It's like a company. How many board meetings do people sit down and say, "All right, people, profits are up. We need to find a way to tank our stock"?
I know, it's unbelievable.
And I know I'm being extreme, but doesn't it feel like that?
Yeah, it does. But again, people, it's not like we don't accept trans. It's just
It's got nothing to do with that. Yeah,
it's not the right venue for something like that. I mean, let's be real. If me, I don't drink Bud Light. I'm more of an IPA guy. But
yeah.
when you associate Bud or Bud Light, what do you associate that to?
Well, that's it. Fenway Park last week had a Bud Light stand that actually shut down because people weren't going to it. You don't see a beer stand shut down to the seventh inning stretch, okay?
No way.
Ever
Exactly.
at a baseball game, all right? And I don't want to really believe this, but it has to be the case because I was out with my son yesterday. I don't think I saw one person order a Bud Light in a crowded bar I was in, okay? I think that heterosexual men and not limited men or just Bud Light drinkers in general don't want to get the grief if someone sees them drinking a Bud Light, which is sad because it's an overreaction of sorts, right?
It is sometimes, but you got to understand, not everybody possesses the great confidence of others. And when someone may do that to them, that could be detrimental to them. And let's be real, my association with any Bud product like that is a blue collar, gritty, work hard man. Okay. Can trans drink it? Certainly. Go for it. There's nothing wrong with that. And if you want to advertise to them, maybe on some venue rather than a global advertisement thing, I could see that. But because then you're alienating some of the large part of your audience and your consumer. That's a bad thing, and we're seeing it bottom line wise. So
I was talking to my son yesterday at the bars. We're drinking an IPA. I told him that you and I were going to talk about this. And he said, Dad, Bud Light was everybody's first beer. He said, it was mine. He said, I don't know about you. I said, no, mine was a Miller. I had that with my dad after mowing the lawn when I was younger, I said, he said, Dad, what do you think people look for, as for what a beer stands for? And we talked about it for a while. We came up with sports, good times, hanging out with friends, athletes, female athletes included. Men, beer drinkers love a strong female athlete. We've never had a problem with any endorsement candidate, Jackie Joyce, Kerner or Joyner, or any of the Olympic programs they did. It has nothing to do with anti-women or anti-non-feminine. It has nothing to do with that. Beer just doesn't stand for the cause they took up. I mean, what we just saw was a person, I think this is about sports, March Madness, so let's drink a beer, pinky out, dressed like, breakfast on Tiffany's. Beer drinkers don't want to see that, all right? And I know that I'm being over the top, but it's a simple issue of branding. At the least concerning. And at the most concerning, again, it's putting publicity where it's not needed, and it's forcing things down the throat of people who don't necessarily want to be part of it. And I just want to touch briefly on something. I did some interesting homework on people's attitudes towards the trans movement in this country. Okay, and one of the biggest stats I came up with is the nationally representative survey of 10,188 U.S. adults conducted in late 2022. Findings show that 1.6 of U.S. adults are trans or non-binary, and the share is higher among adults younger than 30. More than 4 in 10 U.S. adults know someone who is trans, and 20% know one who is non-binary. Okay? So having said that, roughly 8 in 10 U.S. adults say there is at least some discrimination against transgender people in our country, and the majority favor laws that will protect transgender individuals from discrimination in jobs, housing, and public spaces. Right on, right?
Yep.
Absolutely. You don't want to ever think that people will be discriminated in lending practices or anything like that, all right? Hiring. At the same time, 60% say a person's gender is determined by their sex assigned at birth. And this is consistent along party lines, with Democrats being much more in favor of all metrics across the board about trans not being about being discriminated against. But 38% of all people, not by parties, say society has gone too far in accepting the trans movement, while a roughly equal share, 36%, say society hasn't gone far enough. 1 in 4 say things are about right. The fundamental belief about whether gender can be different than signed at birth is closely aligned with every other metric. Okay, Americans who say a person's gender can be different from their sex birth are more likely than others to see discrimination against trans people and a lack of societal acceptance. So the numbers are there. Okay, so they're not huge numbers, but they're about what I thought they would be, as far as the tolerance levels and all that. But I think at the end of the day, I just think that some people. I acknowledge that Andy Dick is a comedian, and Pauly Shore is still out there somewhere, and the WNBA is out there, but I don't want to watch those either. It's just a matter of, if there's something I don't want to be constantly around. If you don't like somebody, it doesn't mean you don't want to be around them. I mean, it doesn't mean that you don't like them personally. It just means maybe you don't want to hang out with them. This is where the outrage comes from. So Bud Light is a perfect example of the absolute devastating blowback of forcing these kinds of things on people because inclusivity. About the agency that measures corporate America's inclusivity, and then they basically put out a witch hunt on them if they don't conform. And that's what Bud Light did. They tried to get on that group's radar in a positive way by inclusivity with this very polarizing person, Dylan Mulvaney.
It comes down to the Democrat side, unfortunately, and trying to forge a utopia. It's just never going to happen. You are never
social engineering.
Yep, you are never going to have a utopian business that has representation of every single aspect in an equally balanced thing. And it's not the way to go about things, because then that business is going to suffer due to that DEI that we've been seeing in many businesses. Yep. But the problem I have here is, okay, as the statistics show, and you're with me on this, we don't want them discriminated at all. But right. I don't feel telling a trans woman that's a man physically, okay, but dresses biologically as a woman, male, and presents, okay, in a bathroom with my 12-year-old daughter, okay. Right. To them, they would say that's a violation of their rights. But here's how I look at it. Thank you. Isn't that a violation of my daughter's rights too?
Yeah.
And you got to look at it both ways. There is not just one party involved here, and they've got to look at both. Now, I'm all for, I do understand that they don't want them to go into the men's bathroom because they may get bullied or someone may do that to them, and that's terrible, okay? I hope that never happens anywhere, but you got to also weigh the other side for the young ladies that are in this world that don't need to do that. So these are the unfortunate things and the balance of things that we do in this world. Again, you're not going to get that utopia, so you do the best you can and provide the safest environment for all. And would you feel that this is safer for the trans to go into the men's room if they're transitioning to a woman, or would you feel it's safer that a man that's a physical male going into a young girl's room and a young girl seeing the physical body of that male? Yeah. I feel that's worse because that's a child. Whereas the other one, we hope that grown adults are going to do the right thing. And boys are a little different, in my opinion, when it comes to certain things like that.
Well, the first reaction to when this first became an issue, and this was not that long ago, a few years ago, about men, however they're dressed, going into girls' locker rooms, for example. You get trans athletes, and then you have just adults going into bathrooms of public places. Was everybody worried about sexual inappropriate behavior or a possible crime,
That's what I'm
which
saying,
didn't pan out to the numbers anyways. That didn't end up being a real thing. It's a legitimate concern.
It has happened. It's not
right.
Rampant,
but it didn't happen in the numbers that people, as in anything else, it wasn't as bad it would appear. And the joke was to all fathers, said, well, there is a bathroom for that person. It's called the handicap bathroom. If I ever catch them in my life, that's got to be all there is to it. And that wasn't a popular thing, but that's how all fathers of daughters felt when this whole thing happened.
Well, all they were alluding to was that there's a third bathroom that you can use. Not the fact that it's handicapped, but the fact that there's a third bathroom. But then
the joke was they were gonna beat the guy up. Is what they were gonna do.
But then there's that other thing too. If they see him go into that third bathroom, they may get beat up that way too. So I do see the two negatives of a third bathroom and them going into the mail, and I hope that any of our male counterparts would just be adult enough and civilized enough to be like, whatever, do you be whoever you want, but just don't infringe upon my rights. We won't infringe upon yours, of course.
Again, there's no correlation between transgenderism and transvestism and everything else of sexual deviance or violence or pedophilia. A lot of people are just more comfortable living in that outfit and in that identity, and I know that we, not probably more so me, may come across a little harsh, but I am very sensitive to the challenges faced, and these are very complex issues. But this is the real world, and how the over pushing of all inclusivity. I mean, you can't watch a television commercial now without seeing a white person, a black person, an Asian person, and somebody who is clearly non-binary or something. I mean, Abercrombie and Fitch practically went out of business because their catalog was all white teenagers on the cover. I mean, it's forced inclusivity, and I think people just want stuff to be generic and happen as it happens. Have it be organic and not be forced like it is. I think it makes people feel like they're being forced.
And I think organically, if you look at this country, we've done fantastic. Again, the utopia is not going to transpire, but we've done great when it comes to that. Now, I will say this. You did say every show we watch today, every movie, every commercial, it has that diversity, except for one channel. Do you know what channel that is?
Fox News.
No, Fox News is diverse.
I'm kidding. But
BET.
All right.
Okay, so why is it that BET doesn't utilize DEI, but they pressure and push liberal ways? It's amazing.
Well, listen, do I even want to go down this road? I mean, are you baiting me here to get me in trouble?
I'm not trying to bait you up, but I'm just making a valid point, right? But
okay, it's the black colleges and black networks and black organizations are the only organizations that are exclusively allowed to be racist. They only promote.
I am a double standard hater. That's the only thing I'll say.
Black actors only. Black colleges, black students only. Again, we talked about this. If it's good for students and it helps enable them and it helps them get the opportunity they need, I have no problem with that. But when you exclude anybody, that is textbook definition racist.
Absolutely.
That's all there is to it. Yeah, segregationist, right.
Let's jump to the next one here. This is the We Are Marshall podcast. Hit that like, share, and subscribe. Go check out our big sponsor, the inexpensive mateconnector.com. Sign up, check out all the features, and see how they can benefit you in finding your significant other or maybe just a friend. But this next story, Bill, I definitely want your opinion on, because now you're talking, we're doing balanced subjects here that are iffy. This one is a $200,000 bail set for a Detroit clerk who locked door before shoplifter shot customers. Okay? The clerk electronically locked the door when a customer tried to steal things and leave. Other patrons were in the store, so the thief then shot those patrons. Okay? The clerk was safe behind the barrier, so he did not think of the danger this put other customers in. I am torn here, though, a little bit. Not too much, but a little. But he did not give others a chance to at least get out, to run, to do something. He locked the door.
Right.
Well, I may lean on the side of him being charged on this one. Okay, you're sitting behind this major barricade that the guy can't hurt you, and you electronically shut the door. It ends up locking in some innocent bystanders that are just in the store to patronize it too. and this guy decides, you're going to lock me in, I'm not going to steal, then I'm going to shoot some of the customers. I mean, that guy should never have locked the door. Again, I know we're trying to stop people from stealing things, but I am one that believes we shouldn't put our lives in danger or other people. So if there was a trained security guard there, he should try to handle the situation as best he can. But the store clerk intervening in such a way when he's safe behind the partition or barrier is ridiculous. He just put other people's lives in danger, and look what just transpired.
Yeah.
What do you say on this one? Yeah.
I think it's a little uneven. I think that Detroit's another one of those cities where people get booked at 7 and they're home for dinner. They have this kind of bail set. It's certainly not a cut and dry case for sure. But I think that you made probably one of the biggest observations that I might have taken a little longer to come up with. The fact that he potentially put other people in danger by doing what he did.
Well, there's no potential. He definitively did. But
all right. I wasn't there, so I'm trying to talk carefully. You know. Oh my God, these stupid pop-ups are killing me. Yeah, he's behind protective glass, remotely locked the door, and then, I think that could have gone down without violence. I mean, this is a situation where store owners definitely, especially today, are very, very fed up with being constantly robbed, as we discussed in previous podcasts. That the crime and the brazenness of the crime is skyrocketing among small businesses as well as large businesses, and especially in the cities. And maybe he took a stand and decided that he wasn't going to let it happen to his store anymore. Maybe it's his father's business. I don't know, family business. But, the magistrate says that people were begging to be let out.
Yep.
So, I mean, I'm not surprised they're not slapping a kidnapping charge on this guy.
Yeah, this guy's going to get in trouble. It's a situation that you can't put other people's lives in danger. If you wanted to intervene with the guy because, like you're saying, maybe it's a family store, his father's store, whatever, okay, you intervene, but don't put the other people's lives in danger. And at this point, I don't know why the stores, all these small business owners, aren't coming up with a way to keep these customers from leaving with stuff. Like, imagine if you had a foyer that was bulletproof, and the minute the guy walked into it, then you lock him in there, you isolate him in there, he's trapped, he can't go anywhere, and everybody's safe. I'm just coming up with this off the top of my head, but there is easier ways than these companies could get together. Maybe putting a corridor in front of all of the stores that locks and is bulletproof, so that when you go in it, like, maybe a tunnel or something, anything to maybe make people safer and get these people put behind bars, because they definitively need to.
Well, I applaud the thought you put into that, but I think we both know how unreasonable that would be to accommodate. And is it? Maybe I'm wrong. I mean, it's a thought that it came to me. I didn't really think about it too much. Do you think that's something that could be done relatively easily, or is it doable?
It's definitively doable. It may be invasive. It's going to be cost some money, but I'm just thinking of ways to keep people safe. And when it comes to money, like, I always think of things, why aren't they happening? But I know it usually comes down to money. But maybe some company, right there, Bill, maybe someone will watch this podcast, come up with a solution similar to what I just said, and grow a burgeoning country out of it. You know what I mean? A company out of it. Maybe that'll happen.
Right.
Okay, what I'll do here is we'll end on that one there, and I'll move on to the next subject.
Well, hold on. I want to say one thing. Aren't we all looking for the same thing here? We're looking for law and order, right? Exactly. Maybe if this situations come up where people are actually afraid, like, the old joke about here's a picture of the Mars rover. It's in perfect definition, and then you got a bank camera of a person who was right in front of the window and they can't make out the face. Yep. There's a running joke around on Facebook about that. Well, better security cameras. Nothing beats a facial recognition software. A lot of the people who are committing these acts are unfortunately repeat offenders. There is a way most cities have a decent set of face recognition systems now. A lot of cameras have been set up, and of course, there's a lot of First Amendment people who don't like that, but most cities have a pretty good set of cameras where they can cover all angles in case there's an incident of some kind. At the end of the day, I wish we didn't have to put Band-Aids on a matter of just making it to the point where people are afraid to commit a crime.
Okay, it's funny you brought up that facial recognition because on one of my podcasts, I did a whole thing on the weaponization of facial recognition by businesses. That's
Okay.
it's a very scary thing to think about, and I think maybe we should visit it this week. Let's revisit the subject. You look up some, and we'll have more dialogue on that subject because it's very. There's a
Well,
lot.
you want to talk about overreach by law enforcement? We could probably do a whole week worth of
Well, here's the thing.
discussions.
The way I approached it in the previous podcast was not about law enforcement.
Yeah.
It was overreach by private businesses, even landlords, private landlords.
Okay.
So this is something we should discuss down the road. But let's move on to another one. Let's bring up this subject once again. This is the We Are Marshall podcast. Smash that like, share, and subscribe. Go check out MateConnector.com, our large, inexpensive dating site sponsor. They've been very good to us. Go sign up. They'll be very good to you. Next one is a person you like to talk about often, it seems. Dylan Mulvaney hired to endorse that Blume movie. Go right ahead. Let's hear what you have to say on this one.
This one doesn't take a whole lot to form an opinion on. You're either going to agree with me or you're not going to agree with me. But Judy Blume's book, Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret, is considered to be the Bible for teenage girls as they grow, as they grapple with the emotional and physical aspects of puberty and becoming a young woman and all that. The book was an absolute major bestseller, multiple printings, multiple editions. Probably Judy Blume's best work. Not that I know her catalog, but I mean, I know she's probably best known for this book. The movie had a $30 million budget, and all the metrics were there. They had a great Rotten Tomatoes score. It had a great endorsement by all the major film critics and all that. But it's struggling at the movie theater. Okay, so. And it doesn't depend on which resource and what outlet you look at. Like if you look at the Examiner, you'll hear one take. You look at WAPO, you hear another, and then you've got the Federalist will have another. And I just looked at CNN and Fox News because that's usually where you find the meat of the story. And the story is that Judy Blume and her publicist, in their infinite wisdom, to endorse the movie for Mother's Day, to move things along, to try to get people to go out and see a movie that they were obviously saying is, it's a great movie and it's based on a classic and it's true to the book and it's be a great story for you to see. As the teenage demographic is the movie, okay, but only 8% of people who fall into the age group that the movie is targeting have actually bought tickets, according to the recent surveys. So they brought Dylan Mulvaney in, the much aligned, controversial Dylan Mulvaney, who I guess is symbolic with empowerment of women, despite the whole penis thing. And people went crazy about it because it's just, why did you have to bring in a person who's not an adolescent girl, a person who has not gone through a female puberty, a person who probably didn't even read the book until was asked to endorse this movie. But that's not fair. I don't know that for sure. That's just an opinion. But one site actually went so far as to say that they endorsed the group that hate women to promote a movie about the empowerment of women. And there it is. I don't have a lot more to offer about it. I wanted to just offer my selective outrage on the subject. And again, I'm not coming down against Dylan Mulvaney. This person is highly successful and it definitely has a niche. And there are people who look up to him. Her biological male identifies obviously as female. celebrating the whole Bud Light campaign was 365 days of girlhood. Okay, so that's what he's all about. But did Judy Blume want the ratings and the box office to go down? I don't know. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this one.
Well, I don't have too much on this other than the thing that keeps going through my head. You used the word niche. Okay, that's a very key word that we got to focus on here. Why is niche important? Because there's a thing called target marketing. Okay,
Right.
you got to focus towards the audience that's going to enable your endeavor to be successful. Okay, and Dylan Mulvaney, like you said, is very successful in her own right. Okay, he. I'm just trying to be as correct as
Yep.
possible, but
You're
her.
doing the right thing.
So,
Yep.
yep. So the thing here is she has a target market. Okay. Unfortunately, it's not where they're aiming. That's the
Right.
problem. Okay. If you want to use Dylan Mulvaney to, push one of your products, like I said earlier on the Bud Light, okay, don't do it as a global initiative. It's not going to work as a global initiative. That shows. If there's a segment of the country that is in this target market, utilize Dylan Mulvaney at that target market, what part of the country or world they're in, on what channels they watch, or something like this. This is the problem, okay? It's not bad that they're advertising with Dylan Mulvaney. It's bad that they don't see the target. Okay, so if I'm one of those businesses, I would be like, all right, that's fine. You can use Dylan Mulvaney, but can you hit the target? They are so
Yeah.
far off on the target market. That's the problem. So that's what people got to realize. It's all okay to do these things and advertise, but make sure you got it focused elsewhere where it should be, or you have the fallout that we're looking at in all of these endeavors. So right there, let's move on. I got a story here that's a feel-good story, and then we got a couple more that will end. This one's going to go a little over our time, but that's fine. This next story is a man gets paralyzed and walks on graduation day. Okay. Watson was shot in the neck while being robbed on May 26, 2016, about 2 weeks before his high school graduation ceremony, according to CNN affiliate the Richmond Times-Dispatch. The alleged shooter was found dead in an unrelated incident a week later, according to that also Richmond Times-Dispatch. While Watson's other classmates were attending prom and graduation, he was left hospitalized with a spinal cord injury. 7 years ago, the chance to walk at graduation was stripped from Khalil Watson, a Virginia man who was paralyzed from the neck down after being shot weeks before finishing high school. But with help from physical therapists and a robotic exoskeleton, Watson, 25, rose from his wheelchair this past week and walked across the stage to receive his first college degree as a crowd cheered him on. Quote, "It felt great being able to experience graduation in person since I was able to do so in high school. So I wasn't able to do so in high school," Watson told CNN, and it kind of felt like a dream in a way. On May 15th, he earned an associate's degree in pre-social work from Reynolds Community College in Richmond. So this story is interesting to me because for years, I write, as Bill knows, and I used to sit there all the time and wonder, why haven't we created some mechanism instead of a wheelchair, instead of you having to wheel around, that you can get in and walk around? Then you can do everything just like a person. And here we are. Now things are coming to fruition. What I see, you get to walk upright. You don't see there. You can move around more. These robot exoskeleton type things are going to be fantastic, easily made, and they're going to change the way people are paralyzed and be able to do things, Bill. Isn't this a great story?
Oh, it's amazing. I mean, how many stories have we seen about spinal cord injuries and just how final they are? When you see the on TV, whether it's a dramatic reenactment or something, and the doctor comes out with a dour face and says, "I'm afraid he's paralyzed." That just suggests such permanence.
Yep.
It doesn't suggest in any way that there's ever going to be an improvement. So 12 years old, 18-year-old hockey player hits the boards too hard, from a bad check. All these veterans, injuries at war, all that. When they hear the word paralyzed, obviously they don't lose hope. There's so many inspirational people. Everybody who is in a wheelchair is just an incredible inspiration to me, because everything is so much harder, and they keep up the hope, and their independent spirit is just so overwhelmingly impressive, So to learn that we're overcoming one of the things that medical science was pretty much resigned to a long time ago, that certain spinal cord injuries were just that. They were just permanent. And to think that there's hope, how can it not be a wonderful story? And how this young man must have felt to be able to do that.
Like you said, it felt great being able to experience graduation in person since he wasn't able to do so. And I mean, this is wonderful. But the big thing is, Bill, you said the word that this whole thing encompasses: independence. It enables these people that just lost all of their independence. So now, guess what? You got your life back in a way. It may not be ideal. Again, that utopia don't exist. Something transpired in your life, but now someone has created something to give you that life back. Wonderful story.
Well, I was at an amusement park about 10 years ago with my kids, a local amusement park, and this veteran walked by. He had 4 prosthetics. He had two artificial legs and 2 artificial arms. Okay, this man was a torso without this stuff. That's all he was. Okay, and he walked right on by like nothing was anything different about him than anybody else. I actually sat down and I cried. I was so blown away by that, and I know that he needs help putting those on in the morning. But when that man gets up, he goes.
Yeah,
how many people?
He's got it as hard as they come, because you're right. He needs to put them on. I unfortunately am very experienced with this. I have an older brother who has lost both his legs and has prosthetics. And to see some of the things he used to do was even amazing. He used to get on a motorcycle with 2 prosthetic legs and go drive all around the place. It was simply amazing. So, anybody that's overcoming things like this, always a wonderful story. Love to see it. But let's grab on to this next subject, because we may have a little bit to say on this. This is the We Are Marshall podcast. Hit like, share, and subscribe. Go visit our sponsor, MateConnector.com. Check it out and see what it can provide for you in the realm of dating. Basically, the next subject is the debt ceiling talks. Okay? This is where politics is really playing a key role here. This is kind of what we were alluding to a little earlier about how Joe Manchin and other people have to conduct themselves to get things done. The debt ceiling, to me, it's been said through Trump that it should never be utilized as a negotiating tool. Well, I disagree. I mean, here we are. You got to think about it. I can't just go, hey, I'm going to raise my debt ceiling this month and spend more money than I got and just move on with my life. I mean, we got lectured from the podium by the press secretary about things such as this, that we should pay our bills and that things should be done a certain way. Well, okay, I agree with you, Karine. But your government should do the same thing. If you are spending too much, more than what you're taking in, it's time to cut spending. And unfortunately, that they have a problem with that. That's where I just don't get the Democratic Party on this issue. I do appreciate McCarthy and trying to fight, because the bottom line, let's be realistic about our budget, period. The number one thing that needs to transpire, we need to cut spending so we can get things under control and start to have a surplus in some way. So then once that surplus is gained down the road, we can then utilize and build more programs if that's what you want. I'm not against the programs. I'm just against if we can't pay for them. If we can't pay for them, why are we doing them right now? Make it better, find a way, and get it done. What say you, Bill, on this debt ceiling fiasco?
Well, the politics is a lot briefer on this one. The Republicans aren't sticking around to watch the paint dry in this one. If they've already walked out. The person that they put in charge of the negotiating, they actually have an official GOP negotiator for this, and a Democrat negotiator, of course, basically pulled away from the hearings this week and said, we're not getting anything done here. We got better things to do. They walked away from the table. Okay. That combined with Yellen saying that basically that she's doubtful that we're going to be able to pay all of our bills. And she warned that many bills be unpaid and that massive cuts are going to have to be made. That drives home further to the point that when we have more than 3 times our GDP in national debt, I don't know how this can possibly be sustainable in any way. All right. So having said that, surprisingly, and I don't think you'll disagree that it's surprisingly I say this, but to me, most Democrats support deficit reduction. And again, being fair and balanced, it wasn't Trump. For all of his talk about fiscal responsibility, added an awful lot to the deficit, even before the COVID happened. Now, COVID, they suggest that Reagan and Bush tax cuts, Iraq and Afghanistan, and COVID make up for the biggest surge in our deficit spending in the last 20-something years. Okay.
Not to cut you off, but how much are they trying to say that deficit spending? Because I got a point. How much are they trying to say that stuff is in conjunction with deficit spending? What's the number?
Well, they really did. They broke it down as to how much of the debt that the public owes and how much the government owes. Okay. And the public debt is like 60%, and the government obligation and responsibility through misaligned funds and $2 trillion here and there they can't find, all that stuff. That's another like 25%, something like that. So I mean, and the numbers, of course, are very shady. They don't really know for sure. Now, Biden cracked me up at the G7 yesterday. He actually went so far as to say that I did my part. I'm not responsible. I'm blameless. Quote, blameless if the U.S. defaults on the debt. I've done my part. Okay. So Ducey, of course, wasn't going to let that go. So Ducey says, Mr. President, on the debt limit, you said already I've done my part. You think there's a breach, nobody can blame you. So Biden kind of corrected himself, or his teleprompter corrected him, if you will. He said, of course, no one will blame me. I know you won't. You'll be saying Biden did a wonderful job. He joked based upon his historically contentious relationship with Ducey, right? So Ducey didn't buy into that. He pressed further. He goes, would you be blameless in a default situation? And Biden says, on the merits, based on what I've offered, I would be blameless. On the politics of it, nobody would be. And by the way, that's one of the things people are contemplating. I got to be careful here. I think there are some MAGA Republicans, here we go again, white supremacy being the whole biggest threat the entire world faces, that he said the other day, in the House, who know the damage that it would do to the economy because I'm president and presidents are responsible for everything. He referred to himself in the third person. Biden will take the blame. And that's one way to make sure Biden's not elected. There you go. Boom. It's about politics there. It's about him being reelected. Okay. And all right, let's give him some props on that one. Historically, a president with a good economy is remembered well, and a president with a bad economy is remembered poorly. Jimmy Carter, will never be remembered, as a great president because of the way the economy was during his time and some other weak moves that he made. But nobody will admit to what needs to be cut. So you always hear these threats that Social Security needs to be cut. Well, a major economist suggested that either 40% tax rates or massive reduction in Medicare benefits needs to take place. Can I ask this? And I know I'm really stirring the beehive here. Why do they never mention welfare?
Well, why are they even mentioning these areas? Okay, these are
well, Social Security is always on the chopping block, Steve. They call it an entitlement.
Well, it's not on the chopping block. It's used as a fear-mongering tactic. These are the things that are staples in our economy. So no one's going to touch them. Let's be honest. They're not.
Well, I hope you're right, but the fund can run out of money, though.
Well, the Social Security fund's in trouble. I'm nervous about
that.
They
borrowed $60 billion from it, and that was Biden who did that, by the way. He was the deciding vote in the Senate to borrow $60 billion from the Social Security, which they're never going to pay back.
Well, that could be another subject at some point, because I'm for a privatization of some of this, because I get better returns on my own than the government does. So
I wouldn't put the stock market in charge of everybody's benefits, but okay.
No, I'm not enable us to take a percentage of that, and if we choose to, we can then. Go ahead.
All right. So Medicare is 12% of the total federal budget.
Right.
Welfare is 14%.
Yep.
Okay, we're talking billions of dollars here. And I'm not talking about the people who need it. Welfare is a legitimate program. Food supplement programs and all that are legitimate. There are people who truly need it and deserve it and are entitled to it, and no one should ever, ever threaten them to take that away. But, Steve, it is so abused.
Well, see, I don't even think we should be talking about Social Security, Medicare, welfare at all. Okay, not right now. Those
All
things
right.
should stay in place. That, like you said, that's what, maybe about 28% of the GDP,
Yeah.
around there. Okay, let's say it's 28%. That means there's 72% of the GDP left. Okay, how much fluff's in there? You're going to tell me we can't find 20% of fluff, 30% of fluff, and say we don't need to study the migratory patterns of the flea covered bee? I mean, I don't know what they are, but
Right.
you get my point. Maybe we
Those
should cut those type of programs down for a little bit rather than these staple programs so that we can get things in order. And then maybe those people will do a better job of some of the things that we need done that are important than just blowing the money on,
there
I'm
was a
not going to
movie.
call them frivolous.
There was a
Go ahead.
movie in 1992 called Dave. Okay, it starred Kevin Kline and Sigourney Weaver.
I remember.
It was about a guy who was an imposter president, right?
Yep.
You remember the scene where he was trying to save a homeless shelter, and his chief of staff said, "Mr. President, if you want to save the homeless shelter, you find the budget money." Okay,
Right.
and he went around the table and he called out all these different secretaries on their programs that he thought were frivolous.
Yep.
And he guilted them into saying, well, I guess, feeling good about the American automobile isn't as important as homeless shelter, Mr. President. You can have my budget. That doesn't happen in real life. People, they grab onto these programs, the National Endowment for the Arts, all the way to initiatives for commerce. These departments, they don't get this budget again if they forfeit it. They have to hold on to it. So I'm talking about this stuff because I'm talking about cuts, and I'm talking about the one thing that needs to happen during this talk, and it's not, is where they can agree to make cuts. Because that's the only way the debt ceiling isn't going to continue to be an issue.
I agree, and it blows my mind that they can't. They weaponize the major products like, yeah, the Republicans are going to cut Social Security, welfare, and things like that.
Right.
That's fear mongering, okay? Because let's be honest, right now, I'm going to say it, and I know you probably believe it. The debt ceiling's going to be signed. Everything's going to be fine. They're just trying to scare people.
It has to be. The economy will collapse. We default on our debt. It's going to have massive implications.
It will be. And if you look at the fear mongering even more, you can go to CNN today. And now CNN's pointing at investors saying if the debt ceiling doesn't get signed, you're going to lose your stock portfolio and all that. So now they're trying to appeal to the Republican side with that type of a fear mongering message.
But when they do that, though, when either side does that kind of placating when it comes to the debt ceiling talks, which happen all the time, right? Historically, the government bails out the stock market. In 2012, we had a massive stimulus. Well, if you're still just printing money because you're not in the gold standard anymore, and we're just printing money by the shit ton, right? Well, that money just adds to the deficit for the next debt ceiling talks.
Yep, absolutely. And
there's no basis for it.
And the average consumer don't know that. And that's a lot of things that people were trying to say what happened during the pandemic. Biden just printed a bunch of money. Trump did, unfortunately, too. You got to be honest.
They had to. They had to.
Well, I don't know if they had to. I would have to look at it more in depth. And this type of subject is definitively like a 2-hour, you and I sitting down, looking at some real good info and trying to, come up with the solution that we maybe see. But we're going to go on to we got 2 more subjects here. The next one we're going to do is this day in history that Bill likes to do. 1881, the Red Cross was formed. So go ahead, Bill, lead off on this, and I'll just do my brief synopsis of this subject.
Well, I mean, this is a truly a feel-good story. It was in 1881, yes, the American Red Cross was founded by Clara Barton, a nurse famous for her later go on to be known as the Angel of the Battlefield.
Yep.
And actually, she was, right after the Civil War, she was. And a gentleman named Adolphus Solomons. There was an organization established to provide humanitarian aid to victims of wars and natural disasters in congruence with the International Red Cross. So she was born in Massachusetts, and I've visited her birthplace. This woman was a Mother Teresa of sorts. She gave her entire life to the cause of medicine, and was a real pioneer. So well known that in 1865, Abraham Lincoln commissioned her to search for lost prisoners of war. And remember, record keeping wasn't what it was, wasn't what it is today back then. And find lost prisoners of war and either declare them dead or help reconcile with the families. And she did an amazing effort. And I can't even begin to imagine how difficult and what an undertaking that was. But she was in Europe in 1870, and she worked with the Red Cross until into late 80s, until her death in 1912. All I want to throw out there, the reason for bringing this up, is the Red Cross is the first organization that any country calls in a humanitarian disaster, and they are experiencing a massive blood shortage right now. I have had several medical episodes in my life, and I've received transfusions to save my life. Don't underestimate how important donating blood is. So if anybody out there is watching this and they know of Red Cross Drive, I've done a few of them with my Masonic Lodge, and every little bit is such a life-saving opportunity. You can save up to 4 lives with 1 pint of blood. So That's all I'm going to say about that, Steve.
And the only thing I really look at this is she was amazing. So amazing that people need to realize that today the supporters, volunteers, and employees of the American Red Cross provide compassionate care in 5 critical areas. Critical. People affected by disasters in America. Support for members of the military and their families. Blood collection, like he stated, processing and distribution. Health and safety education and training, and international relief and development. Think of those 5 cogs and how pivotal they are to keep things safe around the world, because at the end, they did state international stuff, whereas in the first 4, it was more focused in the U.S., but they've expanded so much to be an international organization to help so many people. How can it be a good story that some woman put together some entity that got the first charter in the United States, the first and second, if my understanding's correct, ever, and then went on to the thing grows to be this encompassing to the globe. This is fantastic, good stuff, a good story. And then I'm going to.
And to this day, they only operate on 9% of all donations to run their organization administratively. The rest is 100% charitable donation.
Yep. And what's good is by you doing this, I came up with a real quick story that I wanted to go over. It is in conjunction with the Red Cross, and I think we should recognize people that do things like this. I like the subject you came up with. Just want to let you know this is the We Are Marshall podcast. Hit like, share, and subscribe. Go check out our sponsor at makeconnector.com. And the final good story that I came up with is this son becomes a doctor to save his father and the area he grew up in. Okay? In Cameroon, George's Boel, his father was hit by a car and could never get proper treatment. George's took him all over to many hospitals for help, only to them not to have the correct equipment. So George's went and became a doctor, started a nonprofit, and takes over 500 people per trip to help in an area with health care. In Cameroon, there is only 1 doctor for every 5,000 people. Think of that. According to the World Health Organization, for comparison, the ratio in the United States is 1 doctor for every 413 people. Now, what he's done, and more doctors, from my understanding, are following suit with him. This is a wonderful thing. We may say, hey, this is in Cameroon, it's not here, but that's a good thing that they're doing it there, because all those things flow over, as we saw with the pandemic. So this is a good thing to start spreading throughout the world. I want to recognize George's and everybody to know that he's got this nonprofit organization that's pulling 500 people per trip to change their healthcare situation in Cameroon. And now this is being pushed all over the world now based upon what he started. What do you think of that? Yeah, good stuff.
I think it's fantastic. I mean, you can do one of 2 things. You can sit back and accept your fate, or you can resolve yourself to change it. And this guy, with his father being a motivation, of course, is enormous. But think of how big of a task this would be looking at it when you're getting off the ground and still deciding you're going to go for it. I
Absolutely.
mean,
That's why
that
what he did is amazing.
yeah,
I mean, like I
it's
said,
incredible.
the statistic, one doctor to every 5,000 people. That's crazy. That's like a small town, you know? You got
Yeah, I
one
imagine
doctor.
that the medical facilities they do have are probably not anything that we
Right.
would consider,
Exactly.
anything but probably third world, because it's a small underdeveloped nation, and that's amazing.
Yeah, it's amazing. And now,
That's a
like I
great story
said,
to finish on.
yeah, all the hospitals, like you said, don't have the equipment. That's why he was in trouble with his dad. So he's now utilized this nonprofit to supply some of these hospitals with said equipment. So lots of good things going on in the world, people. Even though we discuss some subjects that are a little heady and deep, there are some real good things going on in the world. As you see, Bill and I continue to give you good stories, especially at the end of the podcast. We want to thank you for showing up and listening again. Thanks, Bill. This is the We Are Marshall podcast. I want you to
A lot of
hit
fun
like,
today.
share, and subscribe always. And go check out our sponsors so we can keep rolling with this thing. They're very good to us. And if you keep going to check them out, they'll continue to enable us to grow this. And maybe someday Bill and I will get to have a studio and do in-house right next to each other and bring in a lot more people. But thank you for listening. This is We Are Marshall. We are Marshall, and have a good evening. Thank you.